Hello and welcome to the Bodyline Pro podcast. My name is Isaac Osborne, founder and CEO of Bodyline Pro. In this podcast, we interview practitioners who use Bodyline Pro and some of the leading experts in the health industry who are committed to taking a scientific approach to improving the form and function of the body and the growth and development of their practice. This podcast is also available on Apple Podcasts and Stitcher. Be sure to check out the show notes for links. For more information about Bodyline Pro, visit bodylinepro.com. Welcome to episode 6 of the Bodyline Pro podcast. In this episode, our guest is Christopher-Marc Gordon. He's a physiotherapist, myofascial osteopath, naturopathic physician, clinical scientist, inventor, author, and consultant for international corporate health management projects. Christopher is the founder of the Center for Integrative Therapy, specializing in the treatment of acute and chronic pain and stress symptoms. He's a co-author of Fascia in Sport and Movement. He is the author of Free Your Fascia, Free Your Pain, currently in production with Handspring Publishing. Christopher is the inventor of the Fascia-ReleaZer, Deep-ReleaZer, and further instruments for self-therapy. He has done 23 clinical studies relating to stress, pain, the autonomic nervous system, and the myofascial structures. He has developed the methods for Interdisciplinary Fascia Therapy, or IFT, a new evidence-based treatment methodology for medical professionals and self-help technique for the general public for the treatment of pain and stress symptoms. Now, here's a note that in this podcast, I was so inspired by what he's doing and the self-help aspect of this that I decided to host a workshop here in Santa Barbara. And unbeknownst to me at the time, when I decided this, I didn't know that he had been to the United States yet to do a certification in IFT. So this will be his first ever certification in the IFT protocol or methodology here in the United States, here in Santa Barbara, hosted by Bodyline Pro this August 2018. Now, check the show notes. There will be a link in the show notes for you to sign up with your email to get the dates when we finalize the dates. We'll have those dates soon. We'll send those out, and for early bird registration. So the workshop will be a 6-day workshop for licensed therapists such as massage therapists, osteopaths, Rolf practitioners, chiropractors, etc. And then it'll be a 2-day workshop for personal trainers, Pilates practitioners, yoga practitioners, and then a 1-day workshop for patients. Now, each one of these workshops are utilizing his tools that he's developed and his science-based treatment methodology that helps people get out of pain, and it's also self-help technique for therapists. I just recently got mine a couple days ago. I got the Fascia-ReleaZer. I've been using it on my body, and it definitely moves connective tissue in a similar way that our hands do, but it accesses it differently. It uses those shearing forces like we do in the Rolf method of structural integration. However, it is a tool, so it does access it differently. I'm not talking about replacing our hands. I don't want to do that, and I don't believe in that. I don't think we can. However, I am for evolving our work, and if it takes a tool to do that, I'm fine with that. And I've used it on my patients the other day, and a lot of them loved it. And there's a few of them that they liked it, but they liked my hands just as much or better. So the more I get familiar with it, the more I'll be able to utilize this tool in my own practice, and I think you'll like it too. I'm really excited to have him here in Santa Barbara, and this was a very fun podcast and inspiring to talk with Christopher. We talk about the difference between shearing and rolling fascia, sensory motor amnesia, and central sensitization, how nerve receptors respond to shearing fascia, vibration and neuromuscular response, because the Fascia-ReleaZer has two vibration modes in there. You'll find out more in the podcast. Heart rate variability and pain connection to the sympathetic nervous system. The difference between male cellulite and female cellulite structure. He has some research that he's done recently on cellulite. He goes over that, and he has the research coming out, I believe this July. And then he also releases for the first time his Fascia-ReleaZer that works with cellulite. And we talk about that and he shows that to us. So if you're watching YouTube, you'll see an example of it. If you're listening to the podcast on Apple, you might want to jump over to YouTube to check it out. So again, don't forget, sign up with the link in the show notes. You'll see it. And to get the dates, the exact dates when we do the workshop in August, and for early bird registration. So here's Christopher. I hope you enjoy the show.
Okay.
Christopher, welcome to the show.
Wonderful to be on the show, Isaac. Thank you for inviting me.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. And I had the honor of actually seeing you receive your award in the Fascia Research Congress back in 2015.
How did you?
Yeah, I did. It was great. I was there. I was in the room, and I've been actually wanting to talk to you ever since. And your device, the Fascia-ReleaZer, has been an absolute fascination of mine. And I would love to hear how this product came to be.
Well, it's an interesting story because you normally think tools are developed because one wants to build something new and something fascinating and to complement other tools which are there. But that wasn't the impulse at all. It was basically because I presented a pilot study in the Vancouver Fascia Congress in 2012. And my job was then to see how quickly we could change tissue using objective measurements, for example, like the Myotone Pro here. So what we did, we had 23 patients and we treated one side and did objective measurements on the right side and compared it with the left non-treated side. And the job was to actually go through the painful process for a clinician to try and standardize the hands. Mm-hmm. Which is a crazy thing to even try because you can't really standardize the hand.
Right.
So what happened was that we chose 5 groups and they were standardized amongst different therapists, and we treated 23 chronic shoulder pain patients. Mm-hmm. And we saw that 4 times 10-minute sessions was capable of not only reducing the pain, but showing big changes and reduction of stiffness and the increase of elasticity. As I said, using the Myotone Pro, because the Myotone Pro is a non-invasive, very quick and easy-to-use instrument which objectifies tissue tone, stiffness, and elasticity. And that inspired me to think, well, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could leave the hands to do the wonderful things that the hands do, mm-hmm. and not try and compete with the hands, but to complement the hands and try and help people to help themselves who have chronic pain and stress.
Absolutely.
So I started off building copper tubes and metal sticks and things that look very strange and oblong and round and heavy. I even filled up my copper sticks with gunshot because I had the idea that if I had lead gunshot in the copper, I could heat it up and I'd have the heat effect as well, but then we were getting to problems of hygiene and heavy metals, and so I thought to myself, no, this isn't the right way. This is a health product. So then I went into exploring pieces of wood, and I realized we needed a certain leverage. Uh-huh. We needed a certain angulation. And beyond all, we needed stimulation of the mechanical receptors. Mm-hmm. So then I brought in the actual vibrational component, which it now has. Mm-hmm. And that became very exciting because we did 14 pilot studies to really explore what it's doing in the tissues. And by going through that process, which is what I call living science. Living science is a really important aspect of my work because I don't do science because I'm just interested in doing science. Mm-hmm. I'm doing science to discover new things. I want to really explore the actual boundaries of what we're doing as physical therapists, osteopaths, chiropractors, because we assume so many things to be a truth. And if you don't explore it yourself, how are you going to find out natural phenomena of how tissue changes through shearing, through rolling, through vibration? Mm-hmm. So it became quite a trip. And so 2 years down the road, now 2.5, The Fascia Release is on the market.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a big success in Europe. It's coming to America very, very soon, and will be supplied by very interesting companies. And I'll be coming to America also quite often, even in this year, 2018 and 2019. And we'll be teaching something called Interdisciplinary Fascia Therapy, which is short for IFT, or IFT is the abbreviation. IFT is the methodology which is developed, the science and the tools which we're talking about.
Uh-huh.
It's not about the product, it's about the methodology.
Right.
If you have a method that one's developed and explore how that method, these fascia tools have been developed.
Mm-hmm. So regarding the fascia ReleaZer,
let's just call it ReleaZer. Let's just call it ReleaZer.
Let's call it ReleaZer. Okay. It has the design is very different than, say, a foam roller. It has a very I don't know how sharp the edge is. It has a pretty considerable edge on it, and this is for more of a shearing effect. And can you speak a little bit about the difference between what that's doing compared to the surface area of a foam roller, and what foam rollers do to connective tissue when you foam roll compared to using the ReleaZer?
Well, I'll try and keep it short because it's a big subject. The difference between shearing and rolling is actually something I've been very interested in.
Uh-huh.
And we have a controlled study on shearing and rolling with 60 athletes. The publication's coming out soon.
Mm-hmm.
So how do I keep this short? Well, basically, let's go back to Ida Rolf.
Uh-huh.
Ida Rolf, as you well know, developed this wonderful technique called rolfing, which has inspired many body workers around the world.
I'm a structural integrator, by the way, as well.
That's it. So I don't have to tell you who Ida Rolf is. So, and I think what I'm going to say now, Rolfers are going to love to hear.
Yeah.
Because Rolfers will immediately understand there's a huge difference to a shearing feeling as opposed to a rolling feeling.
Yeah.
Now, rolling is a continuum of pressure, and it goes backwards and forwards.
Mm-hmm.
Shearing you can do also backwards and forwards, but you normally go from A to B.
Mm-hmm.
You don't slide back again. You actually go somewhere. You either you go into the tissues and let the tissues tell you where to go, or you're very straight-minded and you go for it. And there are many ways, there are many different techniques of shearing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that shearing is better than rolling. I'm saying that shearing complements rolling in every aspect. When it comes to pain reduction, I think a lot of people will find their opinions to be very arguable, and I'm not going to go into that. But the actual, let's just look at the shearing. What we have here is something called vibro shearing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in the tissues we have the big brother trigger points, whatever they may be, and many people aren't quite sure yet what they are. And the science is not at all finished in actually discovering what the trigger points are.
Right.
So the trigger points, let's just call the little nodules in the tissues that definitely cause pain.
Okay.
We have big discussions at the moment in the literature saying what it is, but let's not get caught into that. Let's just look at these, let's say, sensory receptors in the tissue.
Okay.
So we got trigger points, and then we got the crazy Italian family. Ruffini's, Pacini, Golgi, and Interstitiella. And these Italian members here, the Golgis, they like slow, deep pressure. Ruffini, Pacini. Pacini loves vibrations, which we have in the Fascia ReleaZer here. You can hear it. And then we have Ruffini, Pacini, Golgi. The Golgis we talked about. The Ruffinis we like. They get stimulated by rolfing, for example. Rolfing melts or communicates with the Ruffinis. And then we got the interstitials. And they love, and this is another tool that I've been helped to develop. It's called a needle roller.
Oh, wow.
So
and
it's made out of 4 different metals. And it's soft. It's soft and pliable. And it has a very wonderful, subtle, prickly feeling to it. And people get addicted to this. Because what happens is, if you have chronic pain, you've got something normally called sensory motor amnesia.
Right.
And when you have sensory motor amnesia, which is like a dissipation of your sensory in and output from the brains, we often get caught up in something called central sensitization, which is where the pain gets locked in. And there's a lot of literature on central sensitization. So the hypothesis and the idea is, using something like this, we re-educate the brain, tell the patient it's safe to have a prickly feeling on the skin, and we override and we overwrite pain sensitization.
Wow.
And this is part, working with these needle rollers is part of the interdisciplinary fascia therapy technique methodology that I've developed. So IFT is very simple. It's working on the trigger points, Ruffini's, Pacini, Golgi's, and interstitials. Working with validated science, and if the science isn't there, then we do it ourselves and work and collaborate with different universities around the world. And out of IFT, the vibrational shearing was developed. Because I realized I needed a tool. If I wanted to help someone with chronic pain, you've got to do something special with that person, because chronic pain is a big, big thing. You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
And the misuse of drugs and painkillers is just absolutely diabolical. So the Fascia Releaser has one very important aspect to it. It's a therapeutic tool. That's the first thing. The second thing is a self-help instrument. Those are the 2 different aspects. But it's also, as a third aspect, it's a self-help therapy tool for therapists. And that makes IFT once again unique, because it's a methodology for the self-therapy of the therapist, for the patient, and a methodology and a tool to basically help that patient learn how to help themselves. And then you get sustainability.
Yes, absolutely.
Sustainability is the golden key to help people on long term. And this is basically one of the attributes of the Fascia Release, that we're using vibrational shearing to reach out to those 5 receptors.
So you mentioned the sensory motor amnesia, and that's something that is absolutely fascinating to me, is the sensory motor amnesia, and the tool that you just showed there a minute ago.
It's called a needle roller.
And the needle, just out of curiosity, do you after you do the needle rolling, do you use corrective exercises to also enhance correct the sensory motor amnesia?
Well, the whole idea of IFT is that we waken up the sensory. You want a different sensory stimulation, and the needle roller helps the patient to have a totally different connection to that painful part of the body. And you're not even stimulating the circulation of the skin. You're stimulating acupuncture points, trigger points, whatever you have in Mackenzie points, whatever you want to call them, Chapman points.
Sure.
All these different, whatever we call them, that is embedded in the skin, get stimulated here. And the patient is realizing, this is a crazy feeling. This is actually, it's a mixture between pleasure and a kind of, well, it's not quite pain, but it's something before the pain. You don't torture people with any kind of methodology. So what we do is we open up the sensory system by using the needle roller, and then we use our hands, and then we complement the hands with the Fascia Releaser. So you could see the needle roller as something very important to reach out to the interstitial receptors we talked about.
Right.
Those are the 3 nerve endings.
Right.
And once we get the free nerve endings excited, it's like opening the door to the sensory system. And I believe, there's no big science behind this yet, but I believe that if you increase the excitability of the skin, which is a fascia, of course, it's our biggest fascia that we have.
Absolutely.
And people in fascia therapy keep forgetting about the organ skin, don't they? Everyone's talking about superficial fascia, deep fascia, but who talks about the skin? I think the skin is the most precious and most powerful fascia organ we have. And this is one way of helping people to overcome a sensory barrier that they actually build up, and they become, it's like the sensory organism of the whole fascia system is so interdependent and relies so much on the skin sensory system. And we need ways of approaching that.
Absolutely. So my other question is, if you could please give a little bit more detail about the vibration aspect of the releaser, and specifically maybe neuromuscular application to it, how the muscles themselves respond to the vibration aspect of the releaser.
Well, there's a lot of studies done on vibration. Most of them are whole body vibration studies. There's very, very few studies done yet on isolated vibrations, and no studies worldwide done yet on torsion, shearing, vibrational implementation. So the publication we have at the moment has been done with 111 athletic specialists, break dancers. There's a randomized controlled trial. And the vibro-shearing effects we use with the tool here were applied to the thigh, the rectus femoris and the IT band. And so we had a control group, 56 in one group and 55 in the other. And the intervention group, after 8 minutes, they had a lot of pre and post tests. I won't go into detail about that, but let's just stay with the myotone probe, which measures stiffness and elasticity. We measured thermography, temperature. We measured range of movement. And let's just stay with those at the moment. We also measured hydration, so we can talk about the hydration of the extracellular matrix as well, which everyone's talking about. Bone rolling and this and that, and my treatment, rehydrating tissues. This is nice to say, but not many people have proof of that. That doesn't mean to say that their methodology doesn't rehydrate the tissues, it's just that they don't have proof of it.
Right.
But what we noticed with the fascia releaser was, after an 8-minute intervention, we had a highly significant reduction of stiffness on the treated leg, a highly significant change in the elasticity. This is on the rectus femoris. But interestingly enough, on the IT band, you had a reduction in stiffness, but there was no change in elasticity. And we did 2 studies to check this. The second study, no change in elasticity. We weren't able to change the elastic properties of the IT band, but we were able to change the stiffness properties in the IT band. Now, the IT band doesn't have any fat in athletes, so we are literally measuring tendinous fascia structure. So, vibrational shearing in studies show significant changes in the tissues and the function of that limb. That means to say we had a different flexibility in the hip and in the knee.
How many speeds of vibration does the device have?
Well, if you hit the button like that, then the green light goes on. And I made this fascia releaser louder than it would normally be. Can you hear it?
Oh, yeah.
And that's a vibrational speed of 40 hertz.
Okay.
If I hit the button again, I have an oscillatory wave. So I have a vibrational wave.
And then the light is blinking too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what happens here is, this is a whole new game. What's going on here is that you have a vibrational oscillation, which is between 5 and 6 seconds, the wave goes up, and 5 to 6 seconds, the wave goes down. Now, if you look at the science of heart rate variability, which is an expression of the autonomic nervous system, you have the sympathetic nervous system, which is the gas pedal, you have the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the brake pedal. And we know, and we know that all kinds of problems of stress and pain have to do with the excitability of the sympathetic nervous system. And I've been involved in biofeedback and psychophysiology since 2000, and I've done a lot of work in analyzing different heart rate variability systems, and I have most of my scientific work has to do with heart rate variability. And what we discovered is the literature basically tells us that if we want to stimulate the vagal tone, we have to breathe between 5 and 6 seconds in and 5 to 6 seconds out. So this is exactly why I've programmed the Fascia-ReleaZer to the heart rate variability, where we know that science confirms that that stimulates the vagal tone.
Wow.
So if I stimulate the vagal tone, any person who knows much about autonomic nervous system, the body work, it is the most, it's like, well, it would probably sound a bit too exaggerated to say it's the Holy Grail, but if you want to help someone help themselves, you have to teach them in an easy way how to stimulate their vagal tone.
Right.
Biofeedback instruments are very expensive, they're complicated. So what I've done is to build in a vagal tone stimulator into the Fascia-ReleaZer, which helps people self-regulate so that the stress and the pain don't perpetuate the pain which is continually being insourced into the trigger points in the tissue and the nociceptors and the interstitial receptors through too much sympathetic input. If you stimulate the vagal tone, you reduce the sympathetic tone. And thereby you're going to help people to self-regulate and heal themselves. If you stimulate the vagal tone, you down-regulate inflammation, cytokines actually get reduced, you're able to reduce the tension in the whole muscular nervous fascia system, you reduce cortisol, you increase happy hormones like oxytocin, serotonin, and you reduce adrenaline. So that's just a simple explanation of what the first vibration is and the second vibration.
That's fantastic. That's so much information that you've gathered on your research. And you mentioned before we started the show here that you've had, what was it, over 10,000 subjects that you've researched on? I forget.
Well, at the moment, the Fascia Release has been probably we've worked on about 10,000, 11,000 patients in the meantime. We have 23 studies which have been performed on diverse different groups of people, from simple pilot studies to randomized controlled trials. I think we have about 3 to 4 different randomized controlled trials, all looking at the aspects of pain and stress.
That's a lot of data. It's a lot of data.
Yeah.
So I'd like to ask. You mentioned a little bit earlier about superficial fascia, and I read a little bit about the Fascia-ReleaZer having an effect on adipose tissue or cellulite. And if you could speak to that a little bit, I would love to hear what you have to say about that. And it's interesting. I don't know if you're familiar with Gil Headley.
Yes, I know you.
Have you seen, or actually, I think he's actually going to be presenting at the
British Fascia Symposium? No.
Yeah. That's coming up in September or October, I believe.
There's a conference, it's the Fascia Research Congress in Berlin.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah. I recently saw his talk here in November about what's the fuzz and what he's done with the superficial fascia and removing the fat cells and showing the superficial fascia without the fat cells present is absolutely fascinating. But on that note, I would love to hear what the Fascia-ReleaZer does to cellulite or adipose tissue.
Well, I personally, I have a kind of ambivalent connection to cellulite. It has to do with the fact that I didn't see much pathophysiology going on in the background where cellulite was lurking until I started to read the literature, and then I got interested into that, and then I wrote up a poster. I did a literature review and presented it at several conferences, and I realized cellulite has an interesting phenomenon because women show cellulite out of diverse different reasons, because the septum around the fat cells has a quadrate structure.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the septums that men have, it has a triangular structure.
Interesting.
And a triangle is more stable than a quadrate structure.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're looking at the septum, you're actually looking at something which is quite fibrous and quite strong.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to make the skin bulge, you have to have different components. The literature says you have to have more acidity in the tissues, you have to have more oxidative stress,
mm-hmm.
and you have to build up fat tissue.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if the structures are rigid, or they're not rigid, but they have a certain formative force to them, these structures aren't going to change much, and so the forces go up.
Mm-hmm.
And the more oxidative stress we have, the more acidic the tissues are, and the more fat tissues we have, the more dimpling we're going to get at the top.
I see.
And the literature basically says that you can't really treat cellulite, it doesn't really work. All these creams and tissues and oils, they don't really work.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I was asked by the head of the production of the firm called Boiler, this beautiful tool is not only my development or my invention, it is also the very hard work of the firm called Boiler.
Mm-hmm.
And particularly going back to one person called Marco Buda. Marco Buda is a remarkable man because he immediately understood what I was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very glad to go into this breakneck speed of development that I brought onto the firm in developing the Fascia-ReleaZer to the beautiful stage it's now in.
Mm-hmm.
And soon after it was produced and brought on the market, he says, well, Christopher, why don't you think about developing something to treat cellulite? And I said, well, I'm not really interested in cellulite. And he said, well, maybe you should think about it because you can help a lot of people. And so I got into the cellulite literature and realized it's wonderful to tell people to treat themselves with this and enthuse body workers about it.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, it's not easy to tell someone to do this once a day for 15 minutes.
Right.
And that's what should we do.
Mm-hmm.
If you bring into a component, if you actually bring in a component that you can actually look sexier and you even look better if you do this, then suddenly it becomes an argument.
Right.
But I was a bit nervous to lose my reputation here.
You have to admit, it's a pretty risky undertaking to go after the cellulite. I mean, in the United States, there was, I don't know if you ever heard of the Fascia blaster.
Yes, I did.
There's a class action suit against the creator of the Fascia blaster because of claim injury.
And she didn't do her homework. Let's leave it like that. She didn't do her homework, and she started to pinch different people's ideas in the fascia community.
Right. Right.
And we don't like that, especially if it feels bad.
Yeah.
I have nothing to do with Ashley Black. This is the lady's name. I don't know her. Whatever she's done it out of whatever reason. And my development has nothing to do with Ashley Black's. I just know that when the Fascia-ReleaZer was trademarked, a few months later she trademarked the Fascia blaster. And so a lot of unusual things were happening in the background. But let's leave that.
Yeah.
So Marco Buda said, well, look, why don't you look into the literature again and see what's going on? And then I realized that oxidative stress and acidity of the tissues is a common denominator in a lot of pain that we have. So we're not just looking at something which women are interested in getting rid of. Mm-hmm. We're looking at the potential of detoxing and reducing acidity and reducing oxidative stress in the tissues. And we can do that by if we take care of the circulation.
Right.
if we're able to use a vibratory shearing effect to drain the tissues, so we have a kind of a lymph drainage, and if I work out a technique of treating the tissues, which is then confirmed by a randomized controlled trial, and only then would it be interesting and exciting to make different claims. But absolutely. I'm not certainly going to be the scientist. I don't do the science when it comes to Cellulite. It's an independent dermatological institution in Hamburg. But this is in full swing at the moment. So this is the first time in history I'm now going to show to the public. This is the new tool. It's built up on the Fascia-ReleaZer and has all the components of the Fascia-ReleaZer, but it's designed particularly for the stimulation of the tissues. So we have a novel edge here. We have quite a sharp side here, which is soft at the same time. We have a hard, rounded surface here. And it's waterproof because it's supposed to be hanging out in the shower. When people get undressed, it's much easier. If you get undressed once a day, then you can use this mini Fascia-ReleaZer. If you use it in the right way, you can do 5 to 10 minute workout on the tissues, and you produce a massive circulatory stimulation of the tissue. Now, at this stage, we cannot make a claim because the study is actually right on its way at the moment. But in pilot studies, we've seen changes to the tissue which are extremely exciting.
Wow.
So you've got history now. You've heard about the Fascia-ReleaZer on your program.
I am so excited that I get to be the first one to announce that on this program. Thank you so much, Christopher. That's fantastic. So that's very exciting news, and congratulations on that. I'm excited to see what the research says when it comes out.
It'll be out in about July.
In about July. Great. Fantastic. Let's see here. I'm just checking my notes, see if we covered everything here. It looks like we covered.
I'd like to talk about something, if I may.
Absolutely. Please do.
I've got to know about a wonderful product that you developed, which is called the BodyAlign Pro.
Oh, yeah.
I'm fascinated by the BodyAlign Pro because first, it's something I've been actually looking for donkeys. Years and years ago. When these little cameras came out, they had a maximum of 30 seconds you could make a video with.
Right.
That's when my time of trying to do science. My idea of doing science was making a pre and post video, which of course is not science, but it's very revealing for the patient. It's very empowering for the patient to see pre and post pictures. It's wonderful because you don't always have the awareness of your posture or the range of movement you have.
Absolutely.
But I used to get these little tiny cameras and I had 30 seconds to ask my questions and get some kind of result there. But what you've developed here is fantastic. And I just have to show you this. This gentleman here. Oh,
wow.
This is before the treatment. Very stiff and painful. This is after the treatment.
Wow, look at the range of motion. That's dramatic.
And he can hardly move here because he's so slow. Let me just get a bit closer. And I'm just thrilled to bits about the BodyAlign Pro because I feel it's terribly complementary to the Fascia-ReleaZer. So in a few minutes, I can get this kind of result with the Fascia-ReleaZer.
That's a huge change. His thoracic, you can see it in his thoracic spine too.
Yeah.
Mobility is increased dramatically.
And this is just literally, after I think it was about 10 to 12 minutes or something like that. So,
may I ask where you used the releaser on this gentleman?
Yeah. Basically, I'll show you. It's a simple thing. You have the possibility to use the Deep-ReleaZer. This is called the Deep-ReleaZer. We've got lots of releasers going around here. So, first of all, you put on the Deep-ReleaZer, and then you work down. Can you see me?
Yep.
And you put the vibration on, but not everyone likes the vibration.
So I'm just going to, we have this podcast on audio as well. So I'm just going to tell the viewers, the listeners that what he's doing is he's using his device, which is a long device that he can hold with both hands, and he can hold it behind his head, and he's rubbing these two large nodules down his neck. And the nodules are going on either side of his spine, so it's not on his spine. So he's rubbing up and down, and he's using a curling motion to rub the back of his neck. And it looks like it's creating a decent amount of drag. So is that the shearing force that this creates on this device?
It's the drag. You've got this. I'm doing it too quickly, but you can do this nice and slowly. If you have the vibration, it's a bit difficult to describe. It has this most wonderfully soothing, gliding, releasing effect on the neck. And it gets to those places that you normally never get to. Have you heard about the Heineken beer joke? You know, that Heineken gets to places that other beers never get to?
Right.
Well, this is a bit like that. You would never get to those places in your neck without this tool here. So you have a paravertical stimulation of the neck. So we did that. And then you start working sideways. So you're working down the side of the neck to the shoulder. And you're able to make short little curving, swift movements, and you can go very, very slowly, very, very slowly, deeply melting with the tissues. And the idea of the fascia release is that we want a gua sha effect on the skin. Gua sha is where you stimulate the circulation, because circulation is everything.
Yes.
If you're into physical therapy and you know how to stimulate not only the skin but the underlying tissues, you really want a deep myofascial circulation, excitement, and increase. And the fascia releaser really does that. It doesn't have the sharpness of a piece of metal, which you often see when you look into different kinds of instrument-assisted fascia therapy or manipulation. It's wood, and it's much more gentle with the skin. It has a nice warm feeling to it. But if you want, you can certainly repeat it with a certain speed, and then you get this kind of wonderful, deep warming sensation in the tissues. So that's basically all I did with it. And you can get those range of movements in the neck or the leg or the back. This is something we do on a regular basis. And then we empower the patient using the Bodyline Pro. And they just, wow, how did that happen? I mean, it feels so different, but it's wonderful to see my range of movement has changed. Yeah. So can I congratulate you on that too?
Oh, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And I love hearing that was my intention is for the app is I've taken photos for a long time, and I really wanted to make it available in an easy way for everybody to get those type of results, because for the patient to be able to see the changes that they get, aside from feeling the changes, it seems to me that it records it in their body in a much better way. And they also, from a psychological aspect, it seems that they believe more in or have hope that they're going to get better.
Right.
Because they see the results and they also feel the results. So that feedback's important.
It empowers them.
Yeah.
It empowers them. You show them progress. And sometimes understanding change or feeling change can be a challenge to people who have chronic pain and very adhesive tissues. And whereby, with this tool that you developed, it's just absolutely wonderful. And it's just so complementary to the kind of fascia work that we're involved in. And why didn't anyone develop this before? I mean, thank you so much for doing that.
Well, I have to give credit to the people, to specifically a man named Jeff Lynn that did develop this product before. But when mobile devices came out, he did not want to continue with the development. So I took it from there. So I'm riding off the coattails of a man named Jeff Lynn, and so I'm eternally grateful for him.
Well, thank you, Jeff Lynn.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff, and I'm excited that you're finding the product of so much use. It's great, fantastic. So I'm going to be respectful of your time. I know you have probably a busy day ahead of you here, and I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to speak to me and to the audience. Is there any final words that you would like to say, any inspiration that you would like to say to anybody, or advice that you'd like to give? And also, I'm going to put in the show notes where you can be found, your website for the Fascia-ReleaZer, anything that you want to go in the show notes that people can see.
I'm very interested. I'm very excited and interested to come to America. We'll be coming to America several times in 2018. Mm-hmm. Whoever's interested in having further education in interdisciplinary fascia therapy, mm-hmm. utilizing the Fascia ReleaZer and the tools that we've developed, make contact with us. You'll have the email in the podcast you'll be able to see later. Stretch out and write to us and tell us what you're interested in. The IFT course is 2 times 3 days, and we have Fascia ReleaZer self-therapy training courses for 2 days each. We have courses for elite sports people. We have courses for stress management. We have courses for yoga therapists, yoga practitioners, Pilates trainers. We have a very rich culture of training, and I'm going to be very looking forward to coming to America and sharing that with you guys.
That's fantastic, and I was hoping that you would say that because I would like to host you.
Wonderful.
So please come to Santa Barbara, and after we get off the call, let's figure out some dates that I can get you out here, and Bodyline Pro would love to host you coming out here.
We're going to look forward to that. Thank you so much, Isaac.
Thank you so much for being on the show, Christopher. Really appreciate it.
Bye-bye. All the best.
Hey, everyone. Before you go, don't forget to check the show notes for the link to sign up for the notification of when we finalize the dates in August 2018 and early bird registration for the IFT certification courses. I hope to see you there, and I hope you enjoyed the show. See you next time. Thank you for watching the Bodyline Pro podcast. For more information, visit bodyalignpro.com. You can download the app for free on the Apple App Store. This podcast is also available on Apple Podcasts and Stitcher. Be sure to check out the show notes for links. If you are enjoying this, please be sure to subscribe and share this with your friends and family. Once again, thanks for watching, and see you next time.